What do you want, parasite? I'll call the police. That was my brother's greeting after 6 months of silence. Not even a hello. The wind from the mountain carried the smell of pine and dust as I stood on the porch, suitcase still in my hand, the same porch Dad built when I was 14. I smiled softly. Go ahead, if you can, I said and pushed the door open. Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Cole, I'm 31. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Do you ever wonder how blood can turn so cold that it stops feeling like family? Inside, the warmth I remembered was gone. The air smelled of foreign perfume, burnt bacon and something sour, greed maybe. The walls were crowded with their photos. Beach trips, baby showers, a giant family is everything sign where mom's quilt once hung. My sister-in-law froze on the couch wearing my old robe, the one with embroidered initials MC from when I owned this place. Her mother clutched a mug that said home sweet home as if daring me to disagree. And there was my brother, Jake the golden son, standing in front of them like a guard. This is trespassing, he snapped. No, I said quietly, setting my suitcase down. It's called coming home. He laughed, that same arrogant tilt he used to practice in the mirror before job interviews. You sold it to me, remember? I tilted my head. You mean when you convinced Dad to transfer the deed while he was in the hospital? The room went silent. Even the baby monitor on the table seemed to stop humming. I walked farther in, tracing my fingers along the piano I'd bought with my first paycheck, now stacked with baby toys and unopened mail. His wife's voice cracked. Jake, maybe. No, he barked. She's not staying here. I looked at him, the man who once cried on my shoulder when his first business failed, who swore he'd never betray me. And now the same man guarding stolen walls. I'm not here to stay, I said softly. I'm here to finish something. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains, low and deliberate, like a warning or a drumbeat of justice. Jake's smirk faltered. He didn't know yet, but everything he'd built on lies was about to fall. And I was only here to watch it happen. Jake's smirk lingered like the scent of cheap cologne. Finish what? Another tantrum. Behind him, his wife whispered, she's bluffing. But I wasn't. The clock on the wall, Dad's old pendulum, clicked like a countdown. I walked to it, opened the glass case and pulled out the folded envelope hidden inside. My hands didn't shake this time. Dad left something here, I said. Jake rolled his eyes. Not this again. We went through his will. Yes, I said softly, you went through it, while I was arranging his funeral. The color drained from his face. I unfolded the papers, crisp, notarized, real. This house was never fully transferred to you. Dad froze the process when he found out about the forged signature. I only had to wait for probate to close. His wife shot up. That's not possible. I glanced around the room that used to smell like lemon polish on Sunday mornings. You should ask your lawyer, I murmured. The in-laws exchanged uneasy glances. The mother-in-law, sharp as a blade, said, if she's right, this could get ugly. Jake barked, stay out of it, but his voice cracked. I stepped closer. You moved your entire family into a house that isn't yours. Every payment, every remodel, technically trespassing expenses. For a moment no one breathed. Thunder rolled again outside. Rain began tapping against the windows like slow applause. I could almost hear Dad's voice in that sound, steady, proud, calm. Jake's little boy toddled into the room, clutching a toy truck. Daddy, who's that lady? The question sliced through the tension. Jake didn't answer. I knelt to the boy's level. Someone who used to build castles here, I said softly, before your dad decided to burn them down. When I stood, Jake was trembling with rage. You can't just come here and take. I'm not taking, I interrupted. I'm reclaiming what you borrowed. He didn't know that the court hearing had already gone through, that the sheriff's visit was scheduled for morning. Outside, lightning flashed, bright enough to illuminate the fear in his eyes. And in that brief white light I realized, his collapse had already begun. Jake followed me down the hallway like a storm barely contained. You think you can waltz in here and destroy my life? I turned slightly. I'm not destroying it, Jake. I'm just removing the parts you stole. The house creaked under the weight of silence. The same floorboards we used to race across as kids now felt like a battlefield. His wife stood at the kitchen entrance, her voice trembling. Jake, maybe we can settle this quietly. He slammed his palm against the wall. No, he's bluffing. She always wanted this house more than me, ever since Dad said it would be mine. I stopped. Dad said it would belong to the one who cared enough to keep it standing. You let it rot, Jake. You let him rot. He blinked, unsure whether I meant the house or our father. Maybe both. Rain drummed harder on the roof, matching the pulse in my ears. I reached for the kitchen drawer and pulled out an envelope, the one I'd mailed to myself months ago, stamped and unopened. Here, I said, handing it to him. He tore it open. Inside was the official court order. Signed, sealed, final. The deed was mine again. His wife gasped. The in-laws exchanged looks of panic. His mother-in-law whispered, "Jake, she's right. It's legal." I watched the color fade from his face, the arrogance peeling away until all that was left was a scared little boy pretending to be powerful. "I paid the taxes," he muttered, desperate now. "I made repairs. With my inheritance money," I interrupted. "The one you said you'd invest." He stumbled back, his breath shallow. The baby started crying upstairs as if sensing the collapse in the air. "Get your things," I said quietly. "You have until morning." His wife clutched his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear. I turned toward the window, watching the storm wash over the mountains like a baptism. There was no victory in me, only clarity. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through rain and paperwork. And in that whisper I finally heard peace. The next morning the mountain was buried under fog. Dew clung to the glass like tears refusing to fall. I stood by the window, coffee untouched, listening to the muffled sounds of boxes scraping across wood. Jake was packing. His wife had stopped meeting my eyes. The in-laws were whispering in the hallway, their voices small, defensive, suddenly unsure of the man they trusted. It was almost poetic. The same family who laughed at me during Dad's memorial now too quiet to breathe. Jake came into the living room holding a framed photo of us as kids. "You're really doing this," he said flatly. I nodded. "I already did." He looked older than I remembered, not in years but in defeat. "I thought you didn't care about money," he muttered. "I don't," I said softly. "But I care about truth." "And you turned both into weapons." For a second his jaw trembled. He wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to defend. I placed a small stack of documents on the table. Receipts, records, even the email where he'd altered Dad's signature template. His eyes widened. "You." "I told you," I cut in. I came prepared. I just waited for the right moment. Outside, a car engine started. The sheriff's vehicle pulled up slowly, tires grinding on gravel. Jake's shoulders tensed. "You called them." I took a slow sip of my now cold coffee. "Protocol," I said. "They'll supervise the handover. Nothing personal." He laughed bitterly. "Everything about this is personal." "Exactly," I whispered. "That's why it hurts." The sheriff walked in, polite but firm. Paperwork exchanged hands. Jake's signature shook as he signed the final acknowledgement. I could see him fighting the tears he'd never let himself cry. As they carried the last box out, his son ran to me, clutching a crayon drawing, a crooked mountain and a small house. "Can I come back someday?" he asked. I knelt beside him. "When the snow melts," I said softly, "the mountain always welcomes kindness back." Jake watched from the doorway, broken and silent. And for the first time I didn't look away. By noon the mountain light had shifted, that cold silver that touches everything after a storm. The house felt hollow, every echo sharper, like the walls were remembering what silence used to sound like. I walked through each room barefoot. The floor groaned beneath me, familiar yet foreign. Dust particles floated like ghosts through the air. For the first time in years I could breathe without the weight of someone else's shadow pressing on my chest. The sheriff had left. Jake's car was gone. Just tire marks in the mud and a broken flower pot on the porch. I picked up the shards and smiled faintly. It was Mom's old ceramic pot, the one Jake said was ugly and outdated. Now it looked like him, cracked and empty. As I swept the pieces together, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You won. Happy now." It was Jake. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. It was never about winning. It was about remembering who I am. He didn't answer. The mountain wind pushed through the open window, carrying the scent of rain and pine, my father's scent. I could almost hear his voice again, calm, steady. "Don't fight them with noise, Marissa. Fight them with proof." I whispered, "I did, Dad." Walking to the living room, I picked up one of Jake's forgotten boxes. Inside were old family photos. Birthdays, camping trips, Christmas mornings before greed found its way between us. I placed one on the mantel. Me and Jake, 10 and 12, covered in mud, grinning beside the half-built porch. The irony stung. We built this house together. And years later I had to take it back alone. I sank into the old armchair, wrapping my hands around the mug Mom gave me. Chipped, warm, real. The clock ticked again, slow and rhythmic, almost merciful. Outside, a single bird landed on the railing, shaking off droplets, then flew into the fog. For the first time in forever I didn't feel small. The house wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was mine again. That evening the mountain was drenched in gold. Sunlight cut through the fog, spilling warmth over the porch where I once sat with Dad, listening to his old radio crackle out country songs. For a long time I just stood there barefoot, watching the light slide across the valley. It felt like the house was breathing again. Then came a sound, the slow crunch of tires on gravel. My chest tightened. Jake's car. He stepped out alone. No wife, no in-laws, no pretense. Just him holding a folder and looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "I came to drop the last set of keys," he said. His voice was hollow, tired. I nodded and gestured toward the porch table. "You can leave them there." But he didn't. He stayed standing, eyes flicking to the window behind me. "It looks empty again," he murmured. "You cleaned it up." "I restored it," I corrected softly. He took a breath. "Marissa, I messed up. I thought I was fixing things after Dad died, that I was keeping the family together by taking control." I laughed, but quietly. "You didn't take control, Jake. You took everything else." He stared at the ground, then slid the folder toward me. "The bank accounts. The leftover savings from Dad's estate. I didn't touch all of it, but enough. I'm transferring it back. No strings." For a long second I said nothing. The only sound was the wind brushing through pine needles. Finally I whispered, "Why now?" He looked up, eyes red, voice cracking. "Because when the sheriff drove away this morning, I realized I wasn't losing a house. I was losing you." The words hung there, fragile, unexpected, human. I didn't forgive him, not yet. But something inside me loosened. He placed the keys on the table and walked toward his car. The sun hit his back one last time before he disappeared down the road. The house sighed, wood settling, light fading, and for the first time it didn't hurt. It simply felt finished. Night fell slowly over the mountain, wrapping everything in velvet silence. The storm had passed, but I could still hear the faint echo of thunder somewhere far off, like the last reminder of a fight finally ending. I sat on the porch, an old wool blanket around my shoulders, watching the lights from the nearest town flicker faintly in the valley below. The same lights Dad and I used to count when I was little. "One for every dream you'll chase," he used to say. Back then I believed him. The house was quiet now, but not empty. It had memory, presence, a heartbeat again. I walked back inside and opened the window to let the mountain air drift through. It carried the scent of rain, pine, and something softer. Forgiveness maybe, though I wasn't sure yet. On the piano I found the same photo I'd left there earlier. Me and Jake as kids. Our smiles crooked, dirt on our faces, pride in our eyes. I traced the edges with my thumb. The paper had yellowed, but the memory hadn't. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a voice note. Jake's voice, trembling. "You don't have to reply. I just wanted to say, Dad was proud of you. He told me before he went into surgery that you were the only one who never left his side. I was jealous, not angry. I'm sorry, Marissa." For a moment my chest felt tight, then strangely light, like the mountain itself exhaled through me. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead I played the old piano, one key at a time, the sound echoing gently through the empty rooms. The melody was broken, imperfect, but real. Outside, a faint snow began to fall, dusting the steps, softening everything it touched. I whispered into the quiet, "You can rest now, Dad." The clock chimed once. Just once. And in that single lingering note the house and I finally let go. Morning came like forgiveness, quiet, pale, unhurried. The air was thin, the kind that makes you breathe deeper without realizing it. Sunlight slid through the curtains in narrow golden lines, landing on the floorboards that once echoed with shouting. Now only peace. I brewed coffee in Dad's old percolator, the one Jake had left behind. It hissed softly, the smell of roasted beans filling the kitchen. Warm, grounding, human. I leaned against the counter, looking out at the mountains turning amber under the first light. There was no triumph, no gloating. Just a steady calm that comes when truth has finally spoken louder than pride. A soft knock came at the door. The mail carrier smiling. New ownership papers, Miss Cole. I thanked him and held the envelope for a moment before setting it on the table. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The victory wasn't on paper. It was in the stillness of my own heartbeat. The phone buzzed once more. A message from Jake. I'm starting over. Tell the mountain I'm sorry. I smiled faintly. It already knows, I whispered. Walking outside, I stepped onto the porch where frost glittered like powdered glass. My father's wind chime, untouched all these years, swayed gently, singing against the cold. It was off-key but beautiful. I took the old family photo from my pocket, the one of us laughing in front of this very porch. I placed it on the railing and let the wind lift it slightly before pinning it under a smooth stone. A memory anchored, not erased. For a long time I just stood there watching the clouds drift over the peaks. The house behind me no longer felt haunted. It felt alive, breathing with every gust of mountain air. Justice hadn't come through anger or revenge. It came through quiet truth, through patience, through the courage to stand still when everything else was spinning. As the wind whispered through the trees, I finally smiled, not for what I gained but for what I reclaimed. Peace.